Yo, what's up, everyone? Today we dive into the Shanghai weekend chaos in F1 2026, and I'll break down not just what happened, but why it matters in ways you might not expect. Strap in, because this is a soap opera of horsepower, politics, and pure racing psychology. First, the hook I keep coming back to: Mercedes look like the engine of inevitability, but the FIA investigations and a sprint format that can bend under pressure are the real plot twists that could flip the season in an instant. My take: this isn't just about who wins the sprint, it's about who survives the narrative intact, and what that means for the rest of 2026. Personally, I think the dynamic between Mercedes' dominance and the regulatory scrutiny will shape how teams push design boundaries this year. Context in a single line: Shanghai's sprint weekend is testing the team, the driver, and the governing body's patience, all at once. What makes this so gripping is how a single event can influence the entire championship arc, not just a single race. Let's break down the key threads I'm watching, and I'll give you the commentary you can't get from a box score alone. 1. Mercedes' ongoing supremacy, and the pressure that comes with it. The core idea: George Russell starts sprint pole and Mercedes lock out the top spots, signaling continued pace advantage. What this matters for is the strategic map moving forward. If Mercedes can convert sprint poles into wins consistently, the title picture becomes almost a formality, unless someone else closes the gap dramatically. In my opinion, this streak matters because it pushes rivals to chase marginal gains in qualifying setup, DRS zones, or energy management rather than radical overhauls. What many people don't realize is how fragile this edge can be. One bad pit decision, or a regulatory hiccup can swing momentum overnight. If you take a step back and think about it, dominance without reliability is a walking target, and the FIA's investigations add a whole extra layer of risk to Mercedes' season-long story. This hints at a bigger trend: teams chasing consistency in a tighter balance of performance will define 2026, not a few headline overtakes. 2. The FIA investigations, impeding charges, and the broader regulatory backdrop. The gist: 2 drivers under investigation for impeding during sprint qualifying, with potential 3-place grid drops. What this really signals is the sport's push to enforce fairness in a high-speed, high-pressure format. In my view, these proceedings matter beyond the Shanghai weekend because they set precedent for how strictly sprint-related incidents will be judged. This could recalibrate driver behavior on pit straights and braking zones in the race itself, not just the sprint. From my perspective, the bigger takeaway is that governance is becoming a more visible storyline, implying teams will need to plan for both track and regulatory risk in equal measure. A detail I find fascinating is how the penalty risk can dampen aggressive late laps, altering the very psychology of sprint sessions. What this suggests is a trend toward a more cautious, data-driven sprint approach across teams. 3. Ferrari's balancing act, case but still some friction. The essence: Hamilton and Leclerc show competitiveness, yet Leclerc hit battery energy issues on a critical SQ3 lap, and Hamilton tangled with Norris in FP1. What this means is Ferrari isn't out of the race, they're in a tense middle ground where pace isn't enough if reliability or strategy misfires bite. In my opinion, Ferrari's challenge is translating a strong pace into clean, penalty-free performance across all sessions. What people often miss is how battery management, energy recovery, and power unit reliability are becoming as influential as raw speed. If you zoom out, this mirrors a broader trend in F1. Teams with top-end pace still need flawless integration of hybrid systems, data workflows, and racecraft under pressure. The implication is clear: Ferrari can threaten the Mercedes duopoly, but the margin for error is shrinking. 4. Sprint weekend dynamics, how short-format races change risk and reward. The key idea: sprint qualifying reshapes strategy, with more focus on grid position and energy deployment rather than just race pace. What's truly interesting is how teams adapt to volatility: more practice on a single lap run, more attention to tire management and energy mapping under time pressure. From my view, the sprint format accelerates storytelling. It compresses a lot of drama into a few hours, which makes every decision feel amplified. This raises a deeper question: will the sport keep sprint weekends if teams feel the risk-to-reward ratio shifts too far toward unpredictable outcomes for traditional race strategies? A detail I find fascinating is how radio chatter, usually a reflection of driver confidence, becomes a predictor of whether a team thinks a sprint is worth the risk at particular corners. What this really suggests is that sprint weekends could gradually rewire how teams plan their entire season, not just this weekend. 5. Long view, the season tide effect and potential race cancellations chatter. There's mention of potential race cancellations in the broader calendar, and the financial toll on the sport. What this matters for is how a shrinking calendar affects sponsorship, fan engagement, and team planning. In my opinion, a smaller number of races amplifies each event's weight, which could intensify regulatory scrutiny and strategic decision-making. What people don't realize is how calendar stability can influence driver contracts, development budgets, and the cadence of upgrades. If you step back, this ties into a larger pattern in modern F1. The sport's growth is tempered by governance, geopolitics, and economics, meaning teams must be both fast and financially agile to win over a full season. Deeper insight, the Shanghai weekend serves as a case study in modern F1's balancing act, speed, rules, and resilience in equal measure. The performance narrative is still Mercedes first, but the regulatory and format-driven variables are now co-authors of the story. If you look at the big picture, this season may hinge less on which car is fastest and more on which organization can navigate the evolving hybrid rules landscape while maintaining peak execution across practice, sprint, and race days. This is where fans should watch: the soft signals, radio frustration, calm engineer lines, or a strategic risk that pays off, often foreshadow bigger shifts later in the year. Closing thought: the Shanghai chapter isn't just about who wins this weekend, it's about who can sustain excellence under scrutiny, and who can adapt to a calendar and format that's increasingly designed to test every facet of a team. My question for you: do you think the sprint format makes the title race more exciting or more chaotic? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and tell me which subplot you're watching most closely as we head into the next round.